Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. So, Nipa, would you like to give a little summary from yesterday's reading? Because I was in another meeting. Sai Kiran Prabhu, you want to give some summary? Both of you? Some reflections?
It was like following the construction, and he was displeased that in Bombay the construction was very slow compared to the West, and he felt more relaxed being in India, but at the same time he said his true home is at the feet of lotus, like at the feet of Krishna. But yeah, I mean, compared to like the West, India's progression of construction was very slow. That part I remember.
Okay, very good. Sai Kiran Prabhu, anything? No?
Yeah, I was on mute, Prabhu. So basically, yesterday, Prabhupada was having a meeting with Indira Gandhi, and he made a big list of the things he would like to put in front of Indira Gandhi, and one of them was basically immigration for all the Western devotees, making all the MPs and the government servants do kirtan, and banning meat eating in public, allowed only in houses, and prostitution as illegal. So he was coming up with all these things, and he wanted to review it with Indira Gandhi.
Prabhupada had a complete plan, looks like, to make it Satyuga.
Yeah.
I have to read that section. Thank you. And the section which I read was Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. They were trying to work on the bell, fixing the bell, and also at the same time they worked very hard to set up the book table. And they thought Prabhupada would be very happy. Lights are working, everything working nicely set up. Then Prabhupada, they thought in the morning they opened the bookshelf, bookstall. It's inside inside the temple within the temple premises. So they thought Prabhupada would come, and Prabhupada kept quiet and suddenly said, I had to come 6,000 miles to show you. Don't you see this bird, what do you call, nest here in the chandeliers? So basically devotees couldn't see, Prabhupada could see why there is not first class maintenance of the temple. That was his point. Did we read this on 21st Rameswar sent Srila Prabhupada the telegram? Did we read this?
Yes.
Huh? Yeah, I got it. Okay, so here we ended, right? Yeah. One day, Srila Prabhupada had explained in his letters and books that one duty of a spiritual master is to expose the faults in his disciples, even if the fault is only slight. And the qualified disciple considers himself bereft of spiritual knowledge. Always a fool before a spiritual master. He therefore considered the spiritual master's criticism as mercy. One day, Srila Prabhupada was meeting with the temple managers. He wanted practical ideas, not sentiments. He complained about overspending in Vrindavan and now in Bombay also, where construction was just beginning. You will squander money here. he said, and tomorrow we will squander money there. What is your plan to stop this? What will you do? No one knew what to say. There was a long silence. Finally, Akshananda spoke up. We will become Krishna conscious. An impractical suggestion, Prabhupada explained. Akshanand Swami regularly expected the thunderbolt, but that didn't keep him from wanting to be with Srila Prabhupada. On one morning walk, Prabhupada mentioned how the climate in Vrindavan was very harsh, both in summer and winter. In winter, he said the cold would sometimes be accompanied by rain. But Prabhupada uh, but Prabhupada said Akshananda, even if rain, stool, and urine and pus and blood from the sky will we should stay in Vrindavan? Srila Prabhupada gave an almost impy smile and said, "Oh, you are expecting?" The devotees burst out laughing. Another time, Akshananda Swami asked, "Is it true that it says in the Shastra that if you pass stool once a day, you are a yogi, twice a day, you are bhogi, sense enjoyer, and thrice a day, you are rogi, diseased person?" Yes, said Prabhupada, and he kept walking. After a while, he added, "But don't try for passing stool once a day." Acha, responded Akshananda. Srila Prabhupada smiled. Do you think if you pass stool once a day that you are a yogi? It's a heavy conversation. Hari Sori had little personal association with his spiritual master, but one day in Vrindavan, Prabhupada asked to see him to point out a serious discrepancy. As Basde, I asked you to bring the voice. As temple commander, Harisori had asked an old man not to eat in front of the deity in the temple. The old man had become upset and a young Bengali man had defended him, shouting at Harisori that we had no right to criticize anyone in the temple. Harisori had attempted to ignore him, but the young Bengali had continued shouting and threatening to throw him out of the temple and cut off his sikha. Finally, Harisori had twisted the young man's arm and had told the chokidar to throw him out. Srila Prabhupada soon heard of the incident and called for Harisori. Uh, how inauspicious Harisori thought. First time my spiritual master have ever called for me, and it's over a bad incident like this. So Prabhupada is in Vrindavan, right? He's training the devotees continuously. And he's saying that the duty of a spiritual master is to expose the faults. This is a big thing I'm realizing, you know what? I hope, I don't know how you realize that. If a spiritual master or a devotee does not correct us, there's nothing worse than that for us. There's nothing worse than for us. You know why? Because we will never be satisfied and we will be stagnant. We will never grow in our spiritual life. So anytime when devotees really chastises us for the correction, we should really take it in a positive manner. I'm telling from my heart. And Prabhupada, if we don't have a senior devotee who is guiding us and chastising us, and sometimes it happens is, when you chastise, the devotees leave, because they don't understand the depth of the value of that getting chastisement of the devotees and spiritual master. Actually, it's for our good thing. So he was trying to correct them and expose their faults. He therefore considered the spiritual master's criticism as mercy. That's what Prithu Maharaj's subordinates they tell. Prithu Maharaj, they're requesting, if you don't chastise, if you chastise, we feel good. If you don't chastise, what kind of master you will be. So one day Prabhupada was meeting in the temple and he wanted some practical ideas. And here is issue with people are spending. Think about it. These devotees, they don't know. They never know all this finance. They never manage their own finance. And somehow they're maintaining these Indian temples. how big thing for them is to be born in different culture. But Prabhupada is still training them. There's a service will squander money there, and you will squander money here. I'm telling you the fact. I'm getting a very senior brahmachari. I have regularly I've been in touch in Vrindavan. How he says that there's so many devotees simply ruining the temple money, misusing the temple money. And Prabhupada would not have been happy if Prabhupada would have been here. And it is our job to understand that each and every asset of the temple is how valuable, how we can really utilize it rather than wasting this. So one day, okay, did I say? Okay. So no one knew what to say. Everybody was quiet. Now Akshananda Swami, he is speaking up. We will become Krishna conscious. So Prabhupada said, an impractical suggestion. Prabhupada is asking suggestions. So Akshananda Swami Maharaj said, okay, didn't want to keep him. He actually, father, he said he complained about the weather of climate of Vrindavan, harsh in winter and summer, all this thing. So he says that even if rain's stool and urine and pus blood, will we still stay in Vrindavan? So Professor, are you expecting that? So everybody is laughing. He doesn't know what he was trying to say that time. However, Prabhupada was bringing him down. Whatever the big things he's talking about. He also said, I don't know if you all heard about it or not. A yogi, he regulates his diet. He eats, restricted. He passes stool only once. A yogi, a bhogi, he eats twice or thrice. He goes twice. And a rogi who's diseased, he goes keep on going. So he was asking, is it true? Prabhupada said, yeah, that's right. But don't try to be yogi. Are you a yogi? So you don't try to be yogi at this time. That's what Prabhupada's point is. So Hariswari Prabhu is scared because Prabhupada is calling him to see him. And he sees that one devotee, as Bengali devotee, has been putting him in trouble. He asked prasadam should not be taken in front of the deity. He was not following. An old man. It's with regards to old men. Finally, Hariswari Prabhu twisted the young man's arm and told the choki to throw him out. So now Prabhupada has called for Hariswari Prabhu, and he thinks that, okay, I'm in trouble probably, right? First time a spiritual master have ever called me, it's over a bad incident like this. So he's thinking that hopefully, I don't know if that's Nipa, please go ahead.
Prabhupada did not immediately reprimand him, but first asked for his version of what had happened. Hariswari appreciated the opportunity, and he began to tell the whole story. When he mentioned that the old man had asked to speak with an authority and that he had told him he was the temple commander, Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Prabhupada gave his disciple a penetrating glance. Temple commander does not mean commander-in-chief. Where have you heard this? About eating prasadam in front of the deity. Hariswari could not remember an exact reference and he became embarrassed. But I thought I read it in one of your books, Srila Prabhupada, he said. Prabhupada looked at him again. He could understand his disciple's ignorant mistake. Because of the boy's inexperience in India, he had not understood the serious implications of what he had done. Actually, because of the sensitive relationship between ISKCON devotees and the residents of Vrindavana, he should have tolerated the abuse. His was an ignorant mistake, but ignorance was no excuse. This is a great offense, said Prabhupada. He will go out and tell so many people that the foreigners have thrown him out. This is very bad. Prabhupada looked gravely at Hariswari. Now you find out where this man is staying, he said, and you bring him back here, invite him to come back. Hariswari tried his best, looking all day for the young Bengali man who was reportedly staying at hotel in Mathura. He was unsuccessful, however. Disappointed, he returned to the temple, and as soon as he returned, a devotee came and told him Prabhupada wanted to see him. Oh no, he thought, now Prabhupada will really be angry. Hariswari entered Srila Prabhupada's room, which was filled with guests. This boy has come, said Prabhupada, and Harisori looked around. He saw the young Bengali man. The man smiled and said, Hare Krishna. They embraced and began to make apologies. So you give him this fruit, said Prabhupada to Harisori, indicating a basket of fruit sitting on the floor. He then dismissed them and continued preaching to the others in the room. The disagreement was settled, but it had been Prabhupada himself who had changed the young man's heart and rectified a volatile incident. One of Prabhupada's women disciples in Vrindavana who got the benefit of his criticisms was Devi Shakti, who was responsible for cleaning Prabhupada's quarters. Others helped her, but she was the supervisor. When Srila Prabhupada noticed a glass that had not been polished, he asked who was doing the cleaning, and his servant replied, Devi Shakti. Oh, she must do everything, uh, Prabhupada replied. It was far from being as heavy as some of his criticisms of the temple managers, but Devi Shakti took it and an indication that she should become much more attentive to the details of her service. Kishori Devi Dasi, the deity's cook, inquired from Srila Prabhupada about certain aspects of her service. Cook for Krishna as for a young man with a big appetite, he advised her. Krishna should get 10 puris, 4 chapatis, lots of rice, 2 samosas, 2 kachoris, 2 vadas, and 2 of each sweet. The cooked preparation should be served hot. So now you have to teach everyone how to cook, he said. You have to give everyone what you have received. Uh, Prabhupada immediately reprimanded, but then he asked for the version of what had happened. And Hari Sori was respecting the opportunity given to him to tell the whole story. So he mentioned that the old man asked to speak with an authority and told him that he was a temple commander. And Srila Prabhupada interrupted at that point, saying that the temple commander does not mean commander in chief. Where have you heard this about eating prasadam in front of the deity? So Prabhupada is asking that. And Hari Sori could not remember the reference and he became embarrassed and he said like, well, I thought I read it in front of your books, Srila Prabhupada. He replied. And Prabhupada was looking at him again. He could not understand the ignorance of his disciple. And because of the inexperience in India, he had not understood the serious implications of what he had done actually, and because of the sensitive relationship between the ISKCON devotees and residents of Vrindavan, he tolerated the abuse. It was an ignorant mistake, but this is a great offense. That's what Prabhupada mentioned. He will go out and tell so many people and that the foreigners have thrown him out. This is very bad. And Prabhupada was grave at Harisori, looked gravely at Harisori and he said like now you find out where this man is staying, he said, and you bring him back here, invite him to come back. And Harisori was like looking for the young Bengali man and he found him staying at a hotel in Mathura. He was still unsuccessful and he was disappointed and he returned. And a devotee told devotee came and he told Prabhupada wanted to see him. Oh no, he thought now Prabhupada will be really angry. So give him, this boy has come, said Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, Hari sorry, was looking, saw the Bengali guy and he was smiling and said, Hare Krishna. They embraced and began to make apologies. And Prabhupada said, so give him fruit. And then Hari sorry gave a indicated basket of fruit on the floor. And he dismissed and continued preaching. The disagreement was settled finally, and Prabhupada, who changed the young man's heart and rectified the volatile incident. And then a woman disciple in Vrindavan who got the benefit of the criticism was Devi Shakti, who was responsible for cleaning, and others helped her. But she was kind of the supervisor, and Prabhupada, she has observed that like there was a glass which was not properly polished, and he asked who was doing it, and one of the servant replied that it is Devi Shakti. So Prabhupada replied, "Oh, she must be doing everything." So it was like far from criticisms, heavy criticisms for temple managers, and but Devi Shakti kind of took this as an indication and paid more attention to the details of her service. And Kichori Devi Shakti, she was like cooking. So she inquired with Srila Prabhupada about the cooking process and cook for Krishna as per her. And Prabhupada said, cook for Krishna as a young man with big appetite. He like cooked 10 puris, 4 chapatis, lots of rice, 2 samosas, 2 kachoris, 2 vadas, and 2 of each sweet, and should be served hot. And you have to give everyone what you have received. So, like, you have to teach also to everyone, he said. And I stopped there.
Thank you. So everybody got how much to cook for Krishna, how much to offer, right? It's very, very opulent, supposed to be. Yeah. Brajesco, please read.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Kishore.
Kishori would also bring a garland for Srila Prabhupada in the afternoon. To make it cooling, she would sprinkle it with water. For 2 days, Prabhupada said nothing, but on the third day he remarked, "Take this away. Why do you put water like that? It is very displeasing." Vishala had a practice which other devotees consider eccentric, of standing at the gate and loudly reciting Sanskrit verse as Srila Prabhupada passed. One morning, Prabhupada approached the gate in a thunderbolt mood, and as usual, Vishala came forward reciting verses. "Why don't you do something useful?" Prabhupada said. "Sweep this water away." Srila Prabhupada will sample the guest house cooking daily, often suggesting how to improve the quality. Each day, Navayogendra will bring Prabhupada a plate from the restaurant and then note down Prabhupada's comment on each preparation. The following day, the cooks would attempt to improve the food based on Prabhupada's remark. And so it was with each department. Even when riding in the car, Prabhupada would ask, "You are having it oiled regularly? You are having it lubricated and serviced?" Other temples were homes away from home, said Prabhupada, but Vrindavan was home. Those who wished to live there with him, however, had to pass the test of his constant scrutiny and sharp criticism. They had to accept the hard work and austerity. And special austerities mean special blessings. When a devotee asked to be excused from his duties in Vrindavan to operate a farm in the west, Prabhupada said that even opening 20 farms would not be as important as remaining in Vrindavan. Those who preserved eventually began to see all difficulties as nectar, as had been expressed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. When difficulties arise in service, I find them source of happiness. On Radha Ashtami, Srila Prabhupada laid the cornerstone for a large Gurukul building adjacent to the Krishna Balram Mandir. He said that when it was built, the devotees should accommodate 500 students there from all over the world. To the gorgeous temple, the guest house, and soon the Gurukul, Srila Prabhupada intended to draw as many people as possible to the shelter of Krishna in Vrindavan. For this end, he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his peaceful writing. And for this end, he also demanded his disciples to sacrifice. So Prabhupada ji is instructing personally to his disciples. He's connecting with each disciple personally and correcting that disciple. And Prabhupada is emphasizing more on practical services. Like the example of Vishala Mataji is given. She was reciting verses, but Prabhupada said, why don't you do something useful? So he doesn't mean that what she was doing was not useful, but he means that one should engage in one should be understanding the spur of the moment, what the guru wants. The guru wants, and that's where Prabhupada has to say personally that sweep this water away, because he's seeing that devotees are not able to understand how the services have to be performed or which service to be performed. Srila Prabhupada would sample the guest house cooking daily, and then while he was in the while Navyogendra Maharaj, yeah, Navyogendra Maharaj was there in Vrindavan. So he used to bring to Prabhupada each preparation. Prabhupada will personally pass and do the inspection of the prasadam, the food cooked. So it was each department, not only the cooking department, but while he used to travel in the car, he used to inquire about the services done for the car, like simple things like oil regularly. Generally, you know, Prabhupada at such a level, high level, he's inquiring for a small thing. Other temples were homes away from home. For Prabhupada, Vrindavan was Vrindavan. He said it is his home. And then Prabhupada said that whatever austerities will be performing here will be special blessings. And eventually, he quoted Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Satsur Maharaj is quoting here Bhakti Vinod Thakur. When difficulties arise in service, I find them sources of happiness. So that's where we should also try to work on this principle. And Prabhupada is talking about like Gurukul building is opening. So it's a very huge building if you've been to Vrindavan. Very wonderful place. And Prabhupada's desire was to have 500 students in the Gurukul. So this was all for Prabhupada, you know. So Prabhupada wanted his disciples to sacrifice. Thank you.
Very nice. I think one of the thing is that he was seeing is the disciples are feeling, taking kind of ownership, right? You have a car, you know, okay, I'm running, but are you making sure the oil is there? You know,
Right.
when we really take ownership of you know, ours, you know, responsibility when we take this Navayogendra Maharaj, I have seen him. He lives in Vrindavan, right? So
He
he
is,
was from that time. He's in Delhi.
he
Delhi
is in
also.
Udhampur, Jammu.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
But I see him most of the times in the temple in Vrindavan.
He visits Vrindavan. His area is north side only. He's in the north temples, Delhi, Vrindavan,
Maharaj looks very tough, huh?
Chandigarh, Punjab.
Maharaj looks very tough, isn't it?
Yeah, Maharaj is very tough and very particular about services.
Is he?
Yeah, he started a center in Haridwar. He's there in Udhampur. In Udhampur, which is like almost Jammu Kashmir, there on Janmashtami day, the battalion comes, the Indian army comes to clean the temple.
Wow, that's nice.
It's a very unique thing.
I think he will do more now because Jammu and Kashmir is now available. Probably they will open more temples there in that area. Modi will be happy. I've seen disciples are behind him when he comes to. I was thinking, what, you know, there. Anyway, just I didn't know much.
He's very particular, like for his disciples, that they should, how they should live, how they should behave. So he
Oh,
instructs them personally. Yeah,
he does that, right? Okay, yeah.
his classes are very fiery. Like he's very straightforward.
Straightforward.
Yeah.
I can see that. I think I have heard about
Very nice person.
it. So he was trained by with Prabhupada. There, that's a good
Yes.
thing. Okay, now who else is Cyclone Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Constant travel, Srila Prabhupada said, was becoming more and more inconvenient. One reason for his return to India. But he was by no means stopping. Unless he traveled, his movement could not remain vital and healthy. So he was prepared, despite inconvenience, to continue touring. Disciples never stopped inviting him to travel, and recently Pushta Krishna Swami had asked him to come to South Africa. When Prabhupada agreed, Pushta Krishna had quickly arranged 10 festivals and other engagements in Durban and Johannesburg, covering a period of 3 weeks in October. Devotees on the predominantly Hindu island of Mauritius had also requested Prabhupada to visit, mentioning that the Prime Minister wanted to meet him. Prabhupada agreed. Leaving Vrindavan, making brief stops in Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Bombay, he was off to Africa. Mauritius, October 1, 1975. Relieved of management, Prabhupada was freer now to lecture to interested gatherings. Reception by the press and government ministers in Mauritius was good. But most public questions reflected a lack of sincere interest in spiritual knowledge. Is it necessary to be a vegetarian? Is the soul locked in the third eye? You seem dogmatic. Is there any doubt in your philosophy? Nevertheless, people were respectful and considered Srila Prabhupada an important leader and spiritual authority. He remained there a week. Durban, October 5th. This was Prabhupada's first visit to South Africa. For 2 years, the devotees there had been trying to get him a visa, but the government was wary of foreign missionaries. The bureaucratic delays, therefore, had taken months. The devotees had even had to send copies of Prabhupada's books for the government officials to review. Every night for a week, Srila Prabhupada delivered public lectures to crowds of at least 1,000, mostly Hindus, but also many whites. After Prabhupada's lecture at the University of Durban, Westville, a member of the faculty tried to discredit the lecture by saying, "Well, this is just the Hindu concept." Repeatedly, Srila Prabhupada tried explaining how the principles of Krishna consciousness were universal and scientific, but the man kept replying that it was Hindu culture. Dr. S.P. Olivier, rector of the university, sympathized with Prabhupada's presentation and stayed afterward to speak at length with him. "I think you are quite right," Dr. Oliver began, "but very few people tonight got the point you were trying to make, that this is a scientific reality." Johannesburg, October 12. Srila Prabhupada's arrival at the Johannesburg airport was culturally extraordinary for South Africa. White man bowing down before an Indian. The devotees had borrowed a yellow Mercedes Benz and had parked it in a spot reserved for state ministers and other dignitaries. No one objected. As Srila Prabhupada arrived, devotees threw flower petals. Some young European onlookers bowed down, and the police, impressed by all the protocols, saluted Srila Prabhupada and respectfully opened the door to his Mercedes. As in Durban, Prabhupada's lectures were well attended. He was keen to have his books sold during these programs, and he would go to the book booths and ask his disciples, "Are they buying the books?" He was concerned that the Europeans, not just the Hindus, buy the books. So Prabhupada was always traveling without any rest. Even though it was a little bit inconvenient to him, um, he was always traveling to all over the world to make sure that the movement would always remain healthy. And he also wanted to disciples were always inviting him, and he wanted to visit them, even though it was inconvenience for him. And Pushta Krishna Swami had invited him to come to South Africa, and he had arranged some festivals and other speaking engagements in Durban and Johannesburg. Even the Hindu devotees in Mauritius requested Prabhupada to visit, and they also said that the Prime Minister of Mauritius wanted to meet Prabhupada. So Prabhupada agreed, and he left to Africa after making brief stops in Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Mumbai. And in Mauritius, Prabhupada was now relieved because he was in India. He was also the manager, but now he was a little bit relieved of management, and he was focused mainly on lecturing and preaching. So the questions there were basically showed that there was no lack of a sincere interest. There were questions like, is it necessary to be a vegetarian? Is the soul locked in the third eye? And do you have any doubts in your philosophy? So he remained there for a week, and then he went to Durban. This was Prabhupada's first visit to South Africa. The devotees had been trying to get him a visa for 2 years, but the government was wary, and then at last he got a visa. And Prabhupada delivered the lectures in front of thousands of people. They were mostly Hindus, but there were also many whites. And at one lecture at the University of Durban, a member of the faculty was discrediting Prabhupada's lecture by saying that this is just Hindu concept. And Prabhupada repeatedly says that this is universal and scientific, and he keeps saying that it was Hindu culture. And Dr. S.P. Oliver, who was the rector of the university, he sympathized with Prabhupada, and when he spoke to him after the lecture, he says, you are right, but very few people got the message that this is a scientific reality, and it's just not it's not part of Hindu culture. Then in Johannesburg, Prabhupada, when he went there, he got a very nice welcoming at the airport, and it was a sight which was not common, which was basically not common in South Africa, where white men were bowing down before an Indian, and the devotees there had arranged a yellow Mercedes Benz, and they had parked it in a spot which was for dignitaries. No one objected, and when Prabhupada arrived, the devotees threw flowers, and the police also saluted Prabhupada because they were impressed by all the protocol, and they opened the door to his Mercedes. And Prabhupada in Durban, when the lectures were happening, they were well attended. He would also go to the bookstalls and ask if people are buying his books. He wanted the Europeans and not just the Hindus to buy the books.
Yes, that's interesting. Really, Prabhupada created impressive environment. Everybody could give respect. Binapani Mataji's two brothers, I think they opened, they have a temple, they opened the centers in Mauritius. Okay, Srikar.
Prabhupada spoke strongly against racial discrimination. But unlike Mahatma Gandhi, who had been imprisoned in South Africa for his outspoken view, Prabhupada spoke on the authority of scriptures. What is this black-white business? He said. It is nonsense. It is the bodily concept of life. In South Africa, such statements would ordinarily have been considered volatile politics. Yet everyone appreciated Srila Prabhupada because he spoke on a purely spiritual level. One of Prabhupada's disciples in South Africa, Radha, asked privately how to deal with a racial issue in Johannesburg. The only solution, Prabhupada said, was mass Harinam Sankirtan. When Radha asked about starting a farm community, Prabhupada replied, "Don't be so eager to move out to the country. The preaching is in the cities." He said he was very pleased with what his disciples had done in South Africa within such a short time. While Prabhupada was in Johannesburg, Rameshwara and company fulfilled their promise and reached him with copies of both volumes of the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada took the books with him to his lecture at one university and quoted from them, speaking on Lord Rishabhadev's instructions, beginning with the verse in which Rishabhadev advises his son not to live for sense gratification. Mauritius, October 24. Prabhupada had returned to meet with the Prime Minister. As a friendly gesture, the Prime Minister had sent a chauffeured car for Srila Prabhupada's use in Mauritius. One day, Prabhupada was leaving to take a ride in the countryside, but as he was about to enter the car on the right side, Pushta Krishna Swami suggested, "Srila Prabhupada, come to the other side, it's safer." And Prabhupada complied. For half an hour, they rode through the beautiful countryside, past sugarcane fields, mountains, and the ocean. At one point, they stopped and walked along a cliff beside the sea. When they returned to the car, Brahmananda Swami opened the right side of the door and Prabhupada said, "No, the other side is safer," just as Pushta Krishna had previously suggested. A few minutes later, as Prabhupada's black Citroen was rounding a curve, a Volkswagen suddenly appeared, heading towards them in the same lane. Prabhupada was seated behind Pushta Krishna and Brahmananda seated behind the driver. The moment before the Volkswagen had appeared, Srila Prabhupada had sat up cross-legged, planting his skin against the floor of the car to support himself. As the Volkswagen rushed towards them, the chauffeur braked, swerving to the left. The Volkswagen swiveled in the same direction. There was a head-on collision. Pushta Krishna's head hit the windshield, cracking the glass. The driver's head also slammed against the glass and his face was covered with blood. In the back seat, Srila Prabhupada remained sitting, his face set gravely. Brahmananda, in shock, suddenly embraced Prabhupada as if to protect him, although the danger had already passed. Brahmananda then jumped out of the car to try and flag down a motorist, and Pushta Krishna got out and opened the back door. When he found Srila Prabhupada with his face bruised, his leg bleeding, and piece of glass scattered at his feet, Prabhupada didn't speak or indicate how he felt. Suddenly, Pushta Krishna realized that the car, disabled on a curve, was in a dangerous position. So he joined Ramananda on the road to caution motorists and to try to get someone to stop. So while in South Africa in Johannesburg, Srila Prabhupada spoke strongly against racial discrimination. Uh, but unlike Mahatma Gandhi, Srila Prabhupada spoke on the authority of scriptures. And then he would say, what is this black and white business? It's all bodily concept of life. It's all nonsense. So usually such statements in South Africa would be considered like politics, volatile politics. But still, everybody appreciated Srila Prabhupada because he spoke on purely on the authority of scriptures on spiritual level. So one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples in South Africa, Radha, asked Srila Prabhupada like how to deal with racial issues in Johannesburg. And then the only solution Srila Prabhupada said was mass Harinam Sankirtan. And then when Radha asked about starting a farm community, Srila Prabhupada said not to be very eager to move out of the country. The preaching should be in the cities. And then he said he was very pleased with what his disciples were doing in South Africa, did in South Africa within such a short time. And while Srila Prabhupada was in Johannesburg, Rameshwara and Prabhu and the team, they fulfilled the promise, and then they printed the copies, fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and sent it to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada took the book with him to give lecture at one of the universities there, and then he quoted from the fifth canto of Bhagavatam, speaking on Lord Rishabhdev's instructions, and specifically he was emphasizing on how Lord Rishabhdev advised his son not to live for sense gratification. So then in October of 24, when Prabhupada had returned to Mauritius to meet with the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister sent Srila Prabhupada the car, and then Srila Prabhupada rode in a car in the countryside. And then, but as he was about to enter the car, Pushta Krishna Swami suggested Srila Prabhupada to come to the other side because he felt somehow that was safer. So they rode through the countryside, through the beautiful sugar fields, mountains, oceans. And then at one point they stopped and also took a short walk. And then again, when they returned back to the car, Brahmananda Swami opened the right side of the door. And Prabhupada said, no, Pushta Krishna Swami suggested to sit on the left side because that is safer. And then Srila Prabhupada goes and sits there. And then after a few minutes, there was a curvy road kind of, and then suddenly they see a Volkswagen coming from nowhere, and then it was like heading towards them in the same lane, and then it was kind of a rash driving from the Volkswagen. And then Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the car in the back seat, and then suddenly the Volkswagen rushed towards Srila Prabhupada's car, and then the Prabhupada's driver he applied sudden brakes. And then and also the Volkswagen also applied sudden brakes at the same time, and there was a head-on collision. So there was some injuries to some of the devotees like Krishna Maharaj and Brahmananda Swami. They had some injuries, and Srila Prabhupada was also there in the back seat, but he was sitting there with his face gravely, and then Brahmananda was in shock. And then suddenly he embraced the Prabhupada to protect him from the danger, but the danger has already passed. And Brahmananda Swami, he jumped out of the car to try to get some help. And then Krishna Swami Maharaj also got down from the car, and then he found Srila Prabhupada with his with few bruises on his face. His leg was bleeding, and there was pieces of glass around his feet. So Srila Prabhupada kept quiet. It was great. He did not say anything. So and then suddenly Krishna he realized that the car was in a dangerous position on the road. And then he joined Brahmananda Swami, and then to caution the other motorists coming on the way, and then he was trying to get some help.
Is there?
Yes, Prabhu. The Citroen and the Volkswagen were total, and the man and woman in Volkswagen were both injured. Motorists soon stopped, and when the injured persons had received help, Prabhupada and the devotees got into a car and rode back to the temple. Harikesha was waiting anxiously, wondering why Srila Prabhupada was so late. When suddenly Prabhupada entered, walking very stiffly, saying nothing. When Harikesha saw all three were injured, he cried out, "My God, what happened? What happened?" But Srila Prabhupada just walked to his quarters and sat down silent. A devotee brought bandages for the obvious injuries. Prabhupada's chin, hand and leg, and Pushtakrishna's and Brahmananda's heads. Srila Prabhupada had said nothing since the accident. Finally, he spoke. Asam api klesha dasha dehaha. And he translated, as soon as you accept this material body, there are so many difficulties. We were sitting peacefully in the car, and the next moment, crash. He talked briefly about the collision, and Brahmananda Swami told how just before the accident, Prabhupada had raised himself with his cane, preventing perhaps more serious injuries. Get some resin and turmeric, Prabhupada said. Mix it together with a bit of lye and heat it. Prabhupada was again speaking. Bhagavata philosophy and practical medical remedies. It remained a frightened event, however, and Prabhupada asked the devotees to have kirtana. Krishna had saved them, he said. Considering that both cars had been destroyed, the injuries were negligible. Prabhupada sat like a battle hero, anointed in three places with a yellow poultice, while Harikesha read aloud from Chaitanya Charitamrita the disappearance of Haridas Thakur. Then Srila Prabhupada began talking about the dangers of traveling, questioning the advisability of his extensive touring. His mission of translating Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vaishnava literature was too important for him to be risking his life traveling in automobiles. He had been considering a visit to Nairobi before returning to Bombay, but now he said he would cancel his visit. He said he had never wanted to leave Bombay, but because they had made so many arrangements in Africa, he had come. Perhaps the accident was a sign that he should go back to India. The next morning, with Brahmananda Swami and Pushtakrishna Swami hobbling along, Prabhupada went on his morning walk as usual, although he favored his injured knee. Again, he discussed with his disciples whether he should go on to Nairobi or return to India. Siavana, the president of ISKCON Nairobi, argued that Prabhupada should go to Nairobi. The devotees there were expecting it, he said, and they had made arrangements. If Prabhupada cancelled now, he would probably not come back for a long time. Others, however, argued that there was no question of asking Srila Prabhupada to keep going now after this traumatic accident. He should go directly to Bombay. So, Citroen and Volkswagen were total, and the man and woman who were injured. Okay, so in the Volkswagen, there was a man and woman, even they were injured, and motorists soon stopped, and the injured persons received help. And Prabhupada and devotees got into another car and rode back to temple. And near the temple, Harikesha was waiting anxiously as to why Prabhupada was not coming, and it was very late. So suddenly Prabhupada entered and he was walking very stiffly without saying any word. And Harikesha saw all the three injured and he cried out what had happened. But Prabhupada didn't speak even a single word and he was very silent. So the devotees brought bandages for the injuries. So Prabhupada's chin, hand, and leg, and Pushtakrishna's and Brahmananda's heads were injured. So Prabhupada didn't say a single word about the accident, and finally he spoke that if we accept this material body, then there will be so many difficulties. So he briefly explained that they were peacefully sitting in the car, and next moment there was a crash. That's it. He didn't even talk about much. And so Prabhupada was telling how he prevented of getting more serious injuries by bracing himself with the cane. So Prabhupada asked to get some resin and turmeric and mix it together with a bit of lye and then heat it. And he was giving some medical remedies from Bhagavata philosophy. But this event remained very frightening. So Prabhupada asked the devotees to have a kirtan, and he said that Krishna had saved him. So only, I mean, though there were both cars were destroyed, but the injuries were very negligible. So, um, so Prabhupada was sitting like a battle hero, and Harikesha was reading aloud from Chaitanya Charitamrita about the disappearance of Haridas Thakur. And Prabhupada began talking about the dangers of traveling, and he was questioning about his extensive touring. Uh, so he says that translating, I mean, his mission is translating Srimad Bhagavatam and giving other Vaishnava literatures. But it was very risky for him to travel in these automobiles. And he was reconsidering whether he had to visit Nairobi before returning to Bombay. But now he thought he would cancel the visit after this event. And so the next morning, Brahmananda Swami and Pushta Krishna Swami were walking in the morning as usual. And although they were injured near the knee, and the people, I mean, all his disciples were discussing whether Prabhupada should directly return to India or he should go to Nairobi and then to return Mumbai. And Syavana, who is the president of, I mean, who is the president of ISKCON Nairobi, he was arguing with Prabhupada that he should come to Nairobi because devotees over there were expecting him, and they had made all the arrangements. But now Prabhupada had cancelled, and he says that he would probably not come for a very long time. So the other devotees, they were telling that Prabhupada should directly go to Bombay after this traumatic accident.
I think the driving in Mauritius is just like in India, probably, right?
That's right.
I was thinking it's intentional at the beginning. Looks like it was not intentional. It's like style of driving they have looks like. Yes, Prasanthi.
Prabhupada heard both opinions, but he was more affected by the consideration of disappointing the devotees in Nairobi than of recuperating after the accident. He decided to go to Nairobi. But after only a few days in Nairobi, Prabhupada became anxious to return to India. Reports were reaching him about mismanagement in Bombay and about building materials being stolen from the property through a conspiracy involving the workers, the storekeeper, and chowkidars. When Srila Prabhupada heard this, he became so morose. He stopped translating. He even stopped eating. Although thousands of miles from Bombay, he was feeling the pain more than any of the devotees there. Many of them, in fact, were not even aware that the theft was taking place. When Brahmananda Swami asked Prabhupada why he wasn't eating, he replied, "How can I eat when my money is being stolen?" Bombay, November 1st. Srila Prabhupada's plane from Nairobi arrived in Bombay at 1 a.m. Yet Even at such an early hour, he was greeted at the temple by a gathering of intimate life members, disciples, and even some of the tenants of the land. When the group followed him to his room, he confided that he had had a serious accident, and he even showed them the scar on his knee. He said he was relieved to be back. In a letter from Bombay, he wrote, "The accident was very disastrous, but still Krishna saved. Perhaps I may stay here for some time for finishing our temple construction on this land." ISKCON Bombay was Srila Prabhupada's office, and he immediately got to work. He fired the engineer, whom he held responsible for the poor, slow work and stolen building materials. At first, Prabhupada had tried to avoid hiring a construction company by having Surabhi oversee the whole project, assigning work to various subcontractors, but that wasn't working. Srila Prabhupada wanted a change, but there was no clear alternative. He had come to Krishna consciousness for a life of the eternal bliss, he said to Surabhi. But instead of eternal bliss, I'm suffering eternal anxiety. He appealed to Surabhi, Giriraja, and others to do something. One day, a life member, a construction engineer, visited the site and told Srila Prabhupada the temple and the hotel could easily be completed in 6 months. Prabhupada then berated Surabhi, who said that 6 months' time was not enough. Now I am nowhere, thought Surabhi. I'm losing my service. Then another life member, Mr. Omkar Prakash, director, the chief engineer with ECC, one of the India's largest, most reputable construction companies, came to the Sunday feast and examined the work. Appalled at the poor quality, he said that after 2 or 3 years it would fall apart. Giriraja, impressed with the idea of hiring Bombay's biggest, most competent construction firm, spoke with Prabhupada, who was also interested. At first, Surabhi resented that the work was being taken out of his hands, but after meeting Mr. Dare, he also liked the proposed change. Should I keep reading, Prabhuji? Prabhupada heard both the opinions after the accident, and then he considered that he should not disappoint the devotees in Nairobi, and instead of staying there and recuperating after the accident, he went to Nairobi. And he was also, after a few days stay in Nairobi, he was receiving some letters from India about the mismanagement in Bombay. The building materials are being stolen, and there was a conspiracy how it was being stolen. So he was very disappointed, and he was not eating, and he even stopped translating. And when devotees asked, he said, "How can I eat when my money is being stolen?" And he finally reached Bombay. Many life members, disciples, many people came to meet him at 1 a.m. in the night. And he confided to them about the accident and how Krishna saved them. He immediately got to work after coming to ISKCON Bombay. He fired the engineer because he held him responsible for the poor, slow work, and also for the stolen building materials. He initially thought of having Surabhi oversee the whole project using subcontractors, but that was not working. And he was disappointed and was telling the devotees that he came to Krishna consciousness for eternal bliss, but this is continuous suffering, continuous anxiety. And one day, a life member, a construction engineer, came and saw the site and said, this can be completed in 6 months. And Surabhi felt like he's losing his service. And another life member came and said, he was from the very famous um, company, construction company. He came and said the whole construction was of a poor quality and it will fall apart in 2 or 3 years. So Prabhupada and other devotees, they were interested in getting this new life member who is coming from a good company. So they were thinking to hire them.
Thank you. Bombay has been nightmare. Bombay, among all the temples, Prabhupada, we've been hearing Bombay has been nightmare. Brajesh Prabhu, what do you say? You're Bombay. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji, Bombay is a very worst place.
Is it?
Very
It's very
difficult
hard.
to.
It's very hard to deal with Bombay people also, right?
Yeah. Very hard.
Yeah. Because we are hearing so much. Vijayananto, please.
Giriraja, impressed with the idea of hiring Bombay's biggest, most competent construction firm, spoke with Prabhupada, who was also interested. At first, Surabhi resented that the work was being taken out of his hands, but after meeting with Mr. Dir, he also liked the proposed change. The contract was made with ECC, and Mr. Dir presented a progress chart detailing each phase of the work and showing when it will be completed. Srila Prabhupada was pleased with their professional methods despite the higher cost. Now the work would be done as professionally and as quickly as possible, and this was what mattered most. Prabhupada stayed for the greater part of November, and the construction progressed quickly. There was no question of cutting corners to save a little money. Prabhupada explained Surabhi, the temple had to be a beautiful jewel so that people from all over India would want to come and stay. During the Vrindavana construction, Prabhupada had emphasized why so much, why not just simple, but now he was stressing why not more. The temple should be opulent and ornate with marble everywhere. The hotel should be the finest with beautifully furnished rooms and an elegant restaurant. And the air-conditioned theater building should be one of the best in Bombay. Why not marble on the floors? Asked Prabhupada, speaking of the hotel rooms. It's going to be very expensive, said Surabhi. Don't worry about the money, Prabhupada said. Can we put marble on the floor? Then do it. Surabhi did it, but tried to save money by putting a cheaper stone in the hotel hallways. When Prabhupada saw it, he was displeased. It should have been all marble, he said. Funds for the Bombay construction came primarily from the sale of books in America, and Srila Prabhupada was regularly receiving reports. On November 18, Rameswara sent a telegram with some of the good news. 1 million copies of BTG just printed. Devotees gone wild promised to distribute all within 1 month. Spanish Gita just off the press, bringing hundreds of millions to your lotus feet, all possible by your mercy only. When the temple president from ISKCON Denver wrote asking for starting a jewelry business, Srila Prabhupada wrote back disapproving. Why are they doing business? This creates a bad atmosphere. We shall only do one business, and that is book selling. That's all. As soon as you become karmis after business, then spiritual life becomes damaged. This business should not be encouraged anymore. Doing business and not Sankirtana, that is not at all good. Sankirtana is very good, but Grahasthas under condition can do their other businesses, but only if they give at least 50%, but Sankirtana is the best business. Prabhupada envisioned that book distribution could not only finance Bombay construction, but could also support his even more ambitious plans for Mayapur. Book distribution was good business, and it was the best preaching. It was Prabhupada's formula, American money combined with India's spiritual culture, and he encouraged Rameshwara to motivate the Sankirtan in the USA in accordance with this principle. America has the money, so this is cooperation between the blind man and lame man. It will make good relations between India and America. The next chance I have for meeting with Indira Gandhi, I shall inform her about how much foreign exchange we are sending. After receiving your encouraging assurance that a book distribution increases, the amount BBT sends will also increase. we are now going to attempt a Kurukshetra project and the Jagannath Puri project. For the time being, we are spending in India, but eventually we will spend everywhere. This will greatly enhance the American spiritual position. So here it's a continuation of the change in construction company in the construction of the temple. Like Giriraja was impressed with the hiring of the Bombay's biggest construction firm, and he assured Prabhupada that he's also interested. And at the first, Surabhi was resented that the work was taken out of his hands. But then, after meeting with Mr. Dir, he also liked the proposal. And there was a formal contract made with ECC, and Mr. Dir presented a progress chart which showed them like how each phase of the work will be and when it will complete. So Prabhupada pleased with their professional methods, and even though it was a bit costly, but he thought that the work can be done professionally and quickly as possible, which was important at that point of time. And Prabhupada stayed like almost most of the November, and the construction was progressing very quick, and there was no cutting corners of saving a little money. So here Prabhupada explained to Surabhi that temple should be a beautiful jewel, so that all people over India can come, will want to come and stay. And so during the Vrindavana construction, Prabhupada had a different perspective. Like he was asking question like why this much amount is spent and why it is not simple. But now he started stressing why not more, and he emphasized that the temple should be opulent as well as there should be marble everywhere. And the hotel should be the finest with the nice furnished rooms and an elegant restaurant, and the air-conditioned theater building should be one of the best in the Bombay. And he also asked like why marbles was not on the floors, speaking of the hotel rooms, and Surabhi replied that it will be it's very expensive, and Prabhupada assured Surabhi that not to worry about the money, and if we can put marble on the floor, then we should do it. So Surabhi did it, but in an attempt to save money, he put the cheaper stone on the hotel hallways, and Prabhupada was displeased, and he gave a comment that it would be all marble, he mentioned. And regarding the funds of the Bombay construction, primarily everything came from sale of books in America, and Prabhupada was receiving reports regularly. And on November 18, Rameswara sent a telegram mentioning that more than 1 million copies of BTG has been printed, and the devotees promised to distribute everything within a month. And also a Spanish Gita also came out with hundreds of millions to Prabhupada's lotus feet, and everything by Prabhupada's mercy only. And also there was an inquiry to Prabhupada from the Denver ISKCON temple asking for a session, asking for a permission to start the jewelry business, and Prabhupada did not approve it. And he was questioning like why they're doing jewelry business, because it will create a bad atmosphere, and if one involved in that business, and like he mentioned that the only business we should be doing is book selling, and in case if we become karmis after doing the jewelry business, then the spiritual life will become damaged. And also he mentioned that we should do the business and not the sankirtana. That should not be good. I mentioned that sankirtana is very good, and the grihasthas can do other businesses, but if they can give like 50% from their business income, then sankirtana will be the best business. Also, Prabhupada envisioned that the book distribution will not only help for the Bombay construction, but also support other ambitious plans for the Mayapur temple as well. And he also mentioned that the book distribution was a good business, and it was a nice way of preaching, and it was the formula derived by Prabhupada that an American money combined with Indian spiritual culture. So he encouraged Rameshwara to motivate the Sankirtana in the US in according to with this principle.
America has money, so this is the cooperation between blind men and lame men. So it's a good relationship between India and America. The next chance I have meeting is with Indira Gandhi. I shall inform her how much foreign exchange we are sending. After receiving your encouraging assurance that as book distribution increases, the amount BBT sends will also increase. We are now going to attempt Kurukshetra project, Jagannath Puri project. If you'll remember, Prabhupada wanted to have the Jagannath Puri project also big. But unfortunately, Jagannath Puri project, they tried big last, couple of years back. There's some issue, some case going on the land. For the timing we are spending in India, but eventually we'll spend everywhere. This will greatly enhance the America's spiritual position. Always remain dependent on the Guru and Krishna, and your progress will always be assured. So it is a wonderful journey, very inspiring.
Kurukshetra project is coming up very nicely. They are building a temple, Krishna Arjun temple in Kurukshetra. The size of a very huge size in the shape of a chariot. So in the front, there will be 5 horses and Arjuna sitting on that, Krishna sitting there and Arjuna standing. Very huge.
So it'll be like a temple structure is like a chariot?
Yeah, temple structure.
And inside
The main
inside
deities
will
are
be
Krishna Arjun.
deity. So Arjun is also deity, yeah?
Yeah,
Wow, I've never heard of
like
it.
Arjuna,
Maybe.
Prahlad Narasimha.
Okay, and Narayan Rishi is also there, no?
Yeah.
Badrika, I think that's interesting. Very nice, thank you. Maybe you will take all of us sometimes.
Yes, definitely. They are planning and we'll go definitely. Yes.
Let's go. If you're ready, let's go then. Even I'm ready actually.
Yeah, the temple is very 10 minutes drive from the original place where Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So very nice. Kurukshetra is a very potent place. Bhishma Pitamaha's
what?
Pitamaha passing away.
Yeah, inspire our devotees here. Maybe you should take all our devotees plan and take them to pilgrimage. None of the devotees has seen pilgrimage. Take everybody. Come up with some programs and let's do it. Take all the devotees. I'm very grateful for you. You can do this.
We can also start with a virtual session.
Yeah, we can do virtual session. Then we will take the physically also.
Yeah.
All the devotees should have experience of Holy Dham. Please do this service to the residents of Delaware. Let's make plan. I'm for it. Let's take everybody. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You ready, Prasanthi, for pilgrimage?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So everybody, let's make a plan. Hope we'll come out and we'll immediately